So this is another important point. It's a complex social process. This is key to understand, okay? It's key to understand why did happen Embraer and the agro-industrial sector. So that's my proposal hypothesis. For a country to acquire technological capability means above all to be socially capable of generating new scientific and technological knowledge. Firm strategies towards innovation can indeed foster such a capability, but cannot replace it. So it's not a question of firms' capability to innovation, towards innovation. It's more than that. Technological progress of a country can only be fully understood within the wider context of its socio-economic and political environment. And I stress political because this is another key point. Okay, we almost get there. Oops, not yet. You guys know this application? It's free.
What is it?
It's from the United States. It's called Synapse Knowledge 2. You're going to see. What we have here? I'm trying to point out the background of. I wrote here ITA. ITA runs for Institute of Technological Aeronautics, but actually is to understand Embraer. Okay. Why? Because in 1950, the government. The Brazilian government at that time was, Getúlio Vargas was a head of the government. And Getúlio has been president before, during the 30s, during the 1920s something, and was president, head of the president as a dictatorship, almost 30 years. Now, the interesting point here is to understand he was not, okay, he was a very popular guy, but he didn't came to power on his own. What I try to say to you is the following. To understand Brazilian history and Brazilian industrialization, and to understand Embraer, and to understand the performance of agro-industrial sector that has behind it Embrapa, which is the Brazilian company in charge of research, scientific research, R&D, and diffusion among the producers. They did the three parts of the whole process. Scientific research, R&D, and diffusion. So they have people who work in Embrapa who are training how to go to a farm, a large farm, a medium farm, a small farm, and explain the new seeds, the new technique, the new procedure, how they should do they reduced the use of agrotoxical, etc., new techniques. So they got the whole damn thing done. You see, new ideas, how to do it, and spread the good news, so to speak. That's why we achieved this. And how Embrapa came to light, came to existence. Whose idea was? The same question. I'm sorry, I'm going to jump Embrapa, Embraer. I'm sorry if you get a little bit confused, but I'd be mostly happy to come in another time, in another place to keep talking. I love to talk, as you can see. And there are so many information. I myself, when I prepared this, I was astonished. There are things that I didn't have realized before. Because I could read in more detail, etc. But let's go. Let's try to at least give you an overall picture. As I was saying, Brazil, when he became independent in the 19th century, okay, it becomes not a republic, it was the empire. You have two emperors. Peter the First and Peter the Second. Of course, Peter the Second was son of Peter the First. But then some military from the army, and here comes a very important sociological aspect of this. Those high-ranking officers were not from the landlords, the big latifundiaries. No, they came from the middle class, urban middle class. Secondly, they were in touch with French academy, with some philosopher from positivist school, and at last but not least, the Masons. How we call these? Freemasons, or we call them? Freemasons, yeah. You see now the picture, huh? I hope you are trying to, what I'm trying to figure out. So the idea was to promote among those guys, together with some civilians entrepreneurs, was to promote Brazil development and to have industrialization. And then I'm not going into details of this. It was a clash among the elites of the time. Very important events happened in the beginning of the 20th century. But even after, when the Republic has been established, nobody really cares. I mean, there was not a single shot. See? It's like nothing has happened. Just change the guy who is entitled in the say that yes, I'm the head of this country. They don't care really. The elites didn't care. But the officers from the army, they care. They did care, and they understood that just by promoting a republic wouldn't change much. So we have the so-called revolution of lieutenants. This was in the 20s. And Getúlio Vargas was part of that, among a bunch of officers. He was lieutenant at that time. And they realized that was enough just to change the system, the political system. They have to change something more deep. Why? Because they were pursuing the industrialization, how we become industrialized. So when then Getúlio Vargas went off the officers, and 5 years, 8 years later, he became elected, freely elected by the people, and become again president. Now I elected president, not by the force of arms. Okay, and then the project, the political project of Vargas and the whole group of officers and civilians start to be put in march. And they use the historical context of the Second World War to get some bargains, for instance, with the United States. So we have the first steel mill in Brazil. United States helps. They decided that it would be important to have an air force to defend the country because it's a large country with the at that time, almost non-infrastructure roads, railway roads, nothing, how it could defend. So the whole idea of, and then a new doctrine of national security and development start to build up within those officers. And this is very interesting because the idea of defense is not to have a very strong army. It's curious. If you look at the historical period in which from 1964 up to 1984, more or less, if I'm not mistaken, when the military were in control, although there weren't, they kept the elections between commas, but anyhow, it was not the same general ahead of the presidency. You say, oh, this is nothing. Yes and no. You have to be more cautious. What does it mean at that time? Certainly, it was nothing like the guy who is in Venezuela. Whose name? Eh? No, Hugo Chavez. Yeah, it's completely different. I'm not saying that I agree with the dictatorship. I'm just trying to point out that you should look more carefully. So they set up in 1950 the ITA, the CTA, the Center for Technological Aeronautics, which an institution concerned with R&D research. ITA was concerned, focused on prepare the guys who were doing scientific research were kept in ITA, and those who are doing R&D should go to CTA. And almost 20 years later, they set up Embraer. We have a well-trained, prepared people. We have experience in R&D. We know how to at least give some maintenance in aircraft and to project aircraft. That's another very important decision, strategic decision. Are we going to produce a whole aircraft in Brazil, or are we going to invest to know how to project, how to develop aircraft, and then send the project to wherever. If you are going to use turbine, Boeing, GA, wherever, I have a turbine with these specifications. I'm paid, this is mine, the patent is mine, the project's mine, you do it. So it's different. So, and then we have so many data here. For instance, the guy who helped in conceive the whole institutional infrastructure was this Richard Schmidt. He was from MIT. He had been involved during the war, in the whole war efforts. He knew very well the fightings in the United States armies regarding the aircraft power. It seemed, I don't know if it's still like that, but it seemed there were 5 different organizations in relation to aircraft, Air Force. The Army has one, the Navy has one, there was another one just for Coast Guard, and a third one, 551, I think is local, I don't know, it's National Force, something like that. And they said, this is just crazy. No one knows who's decide what. I know what I'm doing in my force, but I don't know what you are doing, neither you. And so you don't have a central command to organize the whole thing. That's why, and I'm going to finish here. That's the guy. It's not too nice. I mean, it doesn't look nice. I mean, but it's a very nice guy. I have this report he made for the Brazilian government. I went to MIT documents. I read through. He was just a professor in the Aeronautic Engineers Department. He had been there for 5 years, something like that. It's not a special brilliant guy, but he was good in what he was doing, and he had the experience, especially during the war, the whole effort during the war. And then he said, this is the opening of his report and recommendations precisely to set up an infrastructure, a legal and institutional infrastructure aiming to produce aircraft in Brazil in the long term. So this was in the 50s, huh? Remember, in the 50s, Getúlio Vargas set up CNPq, CAPES, Petrobras, ITA, CTA, the siderurgic, the steel mill industry. Embrapa came in the 70s, during the military period, precise because of their following the guidelines of what is national security issues we should look. And then said, we have to physically occupy the lands of the country. It's a huge country. If you let there, one day someone is going, this guy doing nothing here. Let's move in. So Brazil will be the first major country, and yes, it was the first major country to organize an air force. And the whole political policies issues regarding aircraft industry, including civilian, is centralized with the single command. To integrate our educational, this is important, and research facilities of a nation in all fields which pertain to aeronautics, the professional level, both civil and military, in one geographic center and in one legal organization. Not only will Brazil be the first nation to centralize these facilities,